Yeah, ready, sir.
Okay. Going live. Welcome to Mornings with Matt, personal and professional development training that connects the art of acting with critical life skills and self-mastery. Presented by the Deering Acting Studio.
Alrighty, okay. Well, good morning, everybody. We today are really excited because we are interviewing somebody from space.
From space. I would say our guest today is just out of this world.
For sure.
Out of this world.
Joey, wow, buddy. I saw you set yourself up for the dunk there, and you took it.
Yeah.
Mr. Robert Farthing, how are you, sir?
I'm well. Thank you, guys. It's a beautiful perspective up here from outer space, looking down on things.
Yeah, you know, when you wave your hand, it gets all webby, so you look a little alien-like. It's really nice.
I do this because the house looks kind of like a bunker, you know? So.
Oh, nice. That's smart. As far as we're concerned, you could be anywhere in the world, right? So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or not in the world. I mean,
or he's in his bathroom. Like we don't know.
I say I prefer to be out of the world sometimes. So there you go.
Yeah. So we did a nice we had a nice conversation with one of your colleagues, Samara Byrne.
Oh.
We talked to her about 2.5 weeks ago, and it's so interesting. Because already things have changed again since we talked to her last, so it was really, really weird. But so anyway, welcome. So Robert Farthing is dude. I had no idea till I read your bio here. This guy's deep. So I'm gonna go backwards actually. So Robert is a producer, a content producer with one of the biggest ad agencies in the Southwest, Reister. And he's been doing that for a long time. But if you go backwards from there, he's also an artist, teacher, and go all the way back. And he started as an actor, which I didn't know.
What?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was it. Came out of high school, and that's where the passion was at that time. It's like, man, I want to do this. Along with teaching, I went to school. Right out of high school, had a scholarship and went to ASU for a while with in pursuit of a teaching degree. And, eventually that just sort of was like, you know what, I think I really want to chase this acting thing. And so I kind of gave up everything, ran off to LA and ended up out there for 10 years, starting with acting and ended up within about 4 or 5 years of trying to knock down the acting door, ended up behind the camera as an art director. So
okay.
That's kind of the path that it took. But acting has always been, a huge factor in the path forward through everything. There's definitely threads and connections there for sure.
Now, is that something that you still ever pursue as a part of your creative outlet? Because I know I've seen you have you've got a band that you play with. And so you're a performer, I know that, and you're an artist. We've come to your art shows, so I'm curious if that's a part of your artistic expression that you ever let out anymore.
In a lot of ways, yes, but it looks different than what you might sort of traditionally think, right? Like, am I on stage playing a role, memorizing lines, and doing that? No. Would I like to? Sure, absolutely. Would I have the capacity to memorize lines anymore? I don't know. It's like, that's kind of like my greatest fear is like if somebody were to say, hey, would you like to do, Death of a Salesman? I'd be like, sure, great, but I don't know that I can memorize lines anymore. But no, performance and acting, and it's funny because when you invited me to do the show and I was contemplating like, okay, well, who is Matt? What is my relationship to Matt? What is our relationship in this acting world? It really did kind of make me think about those roots of acting and asking myself the question of like, well, how does that thread continue today? What skills did I learn as an actor that I'm applying in my life now today? And how am I still a performer in many ways? You know, I think we're always putting on the archetypes of our job, the archetypes of our family, you know, the characters of who we are.
Yeah.
When you have that skill set as an actor, I think it just translates into so many different ways of being a person and a personality in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about that a lot as far as being able to walk into a room and understand what the room needs right away. And so it comes down to listening. And so there are times when you need to command the room. You have to walk in and just own it. And there are other times when you just need to disappear. You need to be very present, very available, but also just kind of blend in, you know. And it's funny because our working relationship is, you know, with you as the ad agency and us as a casting director. And that exact thing happens just about every casting where you would call upon us with non-verbally. There are times when we need to take over the room, just completely walk in and just own it. And there are other times when we just need to disappear and just kind of be there, be available, be ready, but not get in anybody's way.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And those are skills you learn as an actor. You know, just coming on the stage, there are times when you're supposed to be supporting. It's the best thing you can do for the show, because the show's more important than you as an actor. As soon as you figure that out, that it's not about you, I think that's when people's acting skills start to take off. Yeah,
it's an interaction and a relationship, right? Yeah. Like I find that you know, it really truly is. Me personally, I don't have any power. I don't have, you know, I can come in and try to command a room, but you're not commanding anything if you're not open to that exchange between everybody else in the room.
Yeah.
Right. And there's nothing to command if I walk in and, you know, and say, I'm in charge and there's no exchange with anybody else. So you're not in charge of anything.
That's right. You know? That's right. So let's actually describe that for a second then, because I think this might help our audience, because we've got a lot of actors that listen in. And so there are times when actors come in and they dominate the room, but they shouldn't have done that, because they needed to just come in and listen, take direction, and you know, there might be a certain energy going on in the room, and an actor can come in if they try to impose their will, as Robert was just saying, without listening to what's going on, they can totally throw off the energy. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I guess it's all circumstantial, right?
Yeah.
If that is the character, right? If the character is going to walk in and be that person that is so imposing that it's like, I'm going to impose my will. And we certainly have a lot of examples of that in the world right now, right? And you can see how that works or doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? We're getting classic examples of, well, that just doesn't work. You know?
Yeah.
A lot of so it's important to walk in, and like you said earlier, listening is key. Feeling is key. You know, even sometimes more so than listening, it's like trusting your intuitions of a situation and letting a natural flow of the room sort of be there, and then command that flow. If you're the take charge, command the flow of the room, you know. And how do you do that? What tools and tricks do you have as a person to be able to non-verbally move energy, move intention in a room?
And I think a huge part of it too is awareness. I mean, that's something that Matt taught me early on when it comes to even serving you guys as casting clients, and I've noticed it with certain actors. But like sometimes it's like I'm walking around and Matt, again, teaches through doing, and I watched him do this. Like he'll be the one to walk around, he's got an espresso before you think you even need it, and it's already on your desk, or realizing that like someone needs a water and it's like right there when you're in the middle of like talking. That's a way to like subtly be there and be exactly where you need to be without even someone realizing you needed that. And I mean, as a person up in the front room, I've had that where we're like moving and a casting's like really crazy and super busy. And we even missed a moment where something wanted to happen. Someone realized that was the case, and they realized they were going to be in the waiting room for like 30 minutes, like that was going to be the case. And some actors are like, about it, right? And another actor, and this is just like in one of the recent ones we had, realized that and came over and he's like, do y'all have like a type of coffee you like? And then he went over to Bosa and got all of our staff coffee. Like, while he was like, well, we're going to be waiting. Like, I realize I'm going to be in here for 30 minutes. I'm going to think on my character for a minute, and I'm going to serve you all right now. And I was like, dang, like the whole rest of the day, I was like thinking about that actor. And I'm like, that's like a way that he was just aware sort of a need and just how he could serve, and then used it, you know?
Sure. Yeah. And that's transmuting any kind of energy that could be negative, just transmuting it into something positive. And by the way, that's a trick for everybody, because right now I know we're all dealing with sometimes a lot of negative energy and things that feel like they're coming at us. One of the best ways to transmute negative energy is to serve, is to give, because you immediately feel better. So I always say the most selfish thing you can do is to be unselfish.
Yeah, absolutely. It is to that point of the story, somebody trusting their intuitions, right? Mm-hmm. Just having, trusting, like, man, something needs to change here. And what am I capable of doing to help facilitate a better feeling here, and that requires really a good set of internal tools, right? You got to do the inner work before you can do the outer work. And that's something that, acting has taught us, right? Like, in order to be the role that is not me, right? Like I'm being asked to become a character that might be way outside of me personally. And so as an actor, you're going in and you're studying that personality type, that character, that archetype, and that builds different tools of empathy, so that as you move, and progress and mature into the world, you've got this bigger and bigger toolbox always to empathize with. Oh yeah, there's that person's really upset. I'm not them, but I can feel what they're feeling, and I think I can help by doing this. Yeah, and a lot of times it works.
Yeah, that's actually just a easy example of this. And people say that sometimes chivalry has been lost a little bit, but just the idea of being aware and holding the door open for someone who's elderly, or there's a mother with 4 kids and she's trying to walk in someplace and her hands are full. Like, you go get the door, but you can only do that if you're aware, if you're listening, you're present. Yeah. So yeah, that's very cool. Hey, Robert. So I always like to say that we're a part of this pyramid deal as actors and coaches and casting directors and you as an ad agency, and really it all eventually starts from like the big dollars. Like that's where it all begins someplace. And what's funny is people make big dollars throughout their pyramid, so it's really not about who's making the most money, but information flows down. And so I can tell you, for us, we're still trying to find our footing. We're right above the actors on the pyramid of information that flows through us and then gets to them, So I think right now a lot of people are curious, what's the landscape looking like? Are we hopeful where you're at that things are come back to some kind of a normalcy that that we've come to be used to, or is this something that, like, we really got to start leaning into? This is going to be different for a very long time.
Well, from my perspective up here, looking down on first, let me give this caveat and this disclaimer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not going to claim any kind of authority. All I can share is a perspective, right? And it's a personal perspective from my position as a content producer at an ad agency, and also just as a human being going through the same thing that everybody else is going through. And I have a strong spiritual practice also that is very agnostic and diverse and really encompasses a world view of things. So I try to look at sort of everything and take in all of that information in a balanced, harmonious kind of way, and I still know nothing. You know, all I can rely on is my own sort of intuitions and things like that. So to answer your question directly, I guess, you know, is the landscape changed forever? I believe yes. I believe it has. Is it good or bad? Can't say. You know, I mean, right now it's hard and it's challenging, and it has its moments of great struggle and horrific stuff, you know, where you go, oh my God, I'm so hopeless with this. I can't get myself out of this. But I tend to always want to go back to that hopeful place that, you know what, yeah, things are going to change. Things have changed. Will we ever go back to a normal? It's really, really hard to say. I think yes, but I think that trajectory is a long-term trajectory.
Yeah.
You know, we're not talking this year. I don't even think we're talking next year. You know, I think we're talking years from now when we might be able to come back to something that looks and feels like what you and I know today, or knew, not even today, but what we knew 6 months ago as normal, right? And I think part of that change pulse and that change cycle is that we're learning new ways to do things differently. And how is that new way of doing things differently going to integrate into the old way that we used to do things? And as a result, we're going to come up with a different way to do things.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, it's interesting, Matt. We just came back to our in-person classes, but we still have the virtual program.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody was virtual for a couple of months, and having the energy in the room is so much different than the virtual. And it's crazy because we talked about this at the beginning, but just seeing the two side by side, you realize like it really is a whole different form of acting. Because when you're virtual, you're the director, the cinematographer, like everything, versus when you walk into a room, all you have to do is win the room, right? So I just find that so interesting.
Which, of course, brings its own set of difficulties and challenges and whatnot. So it's not, to Robert's point, it's actually not that one is better or worse than the other. It's just different, and there's going to be now this combination. Like I know we talked about over here, we couldn't even we couldn't fathom now teaching a holistic acting program like we do without including some sort of virtual training, because it's essential, and it's something that it, like, had we known, obviously nobody knew, but we really needed to include that anyway, because there's so many great gifts that the actor can learn, even if they didn't have to do virtual castings and virtual jobs and whatnot. That there's so many lessons to be learned in there that are so great. So yes, there's that different in-person energy. It's sort of like you can't describe it, but why is it so much better or just different? There's different energy to watching the Super Bowl at the Super Bowl with the crowd and the energy of that room, or watching it in your living room.
Yeah.
You know, and it is just different. But there are advantages to both, truthfully.
Yeah, and I think just like, just the idea of like going and deciding like this is something that's like changing, like get into it, like stop fighting it, you know. I think in all industries, in all ways, things change. Like they always, like if you look at ours, there was a point where black and white headshots were like the deal. Like everybody like that's, you gotta have a black and white headshot, like. And it kind of, sometimes it's circling back to be cool again in certain ways. Like, I really like your headshot that we use and the ones we used to Scott. And they're black and white. And they're sort of like, and you wouldn't use it for necessarily like an audition type deal. But like, I believe we had a guest on here who talked about this. But there was a point where people were like, really? Like color? Like, you know? And the people who leaned into it got ahead. And the people who didn't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's a very good point, and this is obviously a little bit more massive than a trend, only because this is it's weird because it's not just our industry. Like this is the entire world just took a left-hand turn, and so that's why it's almost both scarier and easier. You know, do you know what I mean, Robert?
Yeah, absolutely. So there, many years ago, I, in one of my multiple career transitions, right, from from teaching, I went into business ownership. From business ownership, when the world fell apart once again, right? I've been through feels like a couple different episodes of this, right? Like 9/11 was a period of time when the world went and all caved in, right? And we moved through that change. And in fact, I think in many ways right now, we're still in the ripple effect of what happened back there. And now we're in a different ripple effect, but the same kind of level of change, right? Big, dynamic. The world is so connected now that something happens and the entire world can see and experience and react to that thing right now, right? Yeah. And so we're learning how to adapt to instantaneous change and instantaneous reaction. So back then, during that period of time, I worked with a business consultant in Australia and was able to go to Australia with her. And her methodology was, she really understood. She was this great data analysis. I mean, she was also this very open spiritual person. And she talked about the change pulse, right? And she had actually recorded how there's this pulse of change that you can watch, right? And that when we're in the change pulse, we're all, initially we're like, hey, we need to make a change. And so everybody gets, you go through that thing and we need to make this change, and everybody's on board and you're brainstorming and you're coming around like, okay, let's make the change. And everybody's on their way up. It's like gathering all the things, doing all the stuff, got it all together, boom, boom, boom. And then you reach the top where you have it all together. You're ready to make the change. And what happens? Boom, you start to do the change. And the change is this peeling away and this destruction of the things that were there. And you go down and you down and down, and it's like, oh my God, are we going to make the change? Are we going to do it? And everybody's resisting and fighting and resisting that change, because change is hard.
Yeah.
Right? Changing is our normal, and we're not comfortable with that. We don't like that. So down we go and down we go and down we go and down. At a point, you reach the point of no return. You're going to change, right? And the minute you accept and you go, okay, fine, I'm changing. I've changed, back up you go, yeah. Right? And that's a cycle, and that's a change. And so really kind of conscious of that teaching now as I watch this and go, where are we in the change pulse? I'd like to think we're at the bottom of it and we're on our way back up, but I don't know,
And if we're on our way back up, that just means there's another change coming, which is such a great point. And it's just such a big change and all at once. That's what makes it so different. And like I was saying before about it being both scarier and harder and easier and less scary, is it looks like this. Let's just say, the arts in general is still trying to find their footing, and so we're no different. We're navigating our way and finding new ways of doing things and getting creative as creatives and whatnot. But if we were, let's just say we were to tell somebody we were going to go, we're down 50%, let's just say. Everyone would understand. That's the interesting thing. They'd all go, oh, okay, totally get that. Coronavirus, this and that, like nothing you could have done, blah, blah, blah. Like they sympathize in that way. On the other side, they're going to go, yeah, but so is the rest of the world. So you also get less sympathy. So it's an interesting thing. It's like everybody understands where you are, but at the same time, they're going, yeah, but I'm going through this also. So if I got to figure it out, you got to figure it out.
So that's the difference between sympathy and empathy, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, sympathetic response is, I sympathize with you. I'm sad for you. I want to give you that kind of thing. When we're going through the same thing, then you have empathy. Mm-hmm. Oh man, I feel you, right? You tell me your story. I'm going to tell you my story. Let's find the intersections where our stories connect. And now you realize, holy crap, we're all in this together, right? So what, are we really on opposite sides of the fence all the time? And I think that's part of what the change pulse conflict is right now, is that there's this polarization thing that's going on, right? Where people are taking their stance and they're putting their flag on their ground and they're saying, but this is my thing. No. This is mine. And then when you break it down and you empathize and you go, yeah, but look at all of the different things that we're experiencing together.
Right.
And then if you can bridge, empathy is that bridge over that gap, I think, that is what we're learning, I'm hoping, right? Like that's the bridge building tool right there, is to help build empathy. Doesn't have to be the same story, doesn't have to be the same circumstances, but what are the empathetic things that we are all experiencing together, right?
Yeah, that's really powerful. I've said that for a while. I believe empathy is key. Sympathy can actually be damaging. You can walk in and sympathize for somebody, which just means you feel bad for them, and nobody really wants to be felt bad for. People want to know, like, do you feel me? Like, hey, I feel you. I understand that boat, but let me, as Robert just said, get in the boat with you and try to navigate this thing together. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. We all need to be empathizing with each other right now, and be generous. That's a great way to be empathetic, is to get in and go, okay, what can I give? There's usually a way that I can use my skill set and what I have to help out your situation, and understanding that someone's going to give back. It doesn't have to be you, but somebody will give back to me in a way that I need. And as we all start to do this as a world, we'll find our way out of this and into this new. It's just a new way. Like it's not better. It's not worse. It's different, and it's progression too. If we're not in progress, we will be unhappy. So there is a part of the struggle right now that's giving the world purpose, and I think that's a good thing. We all have a purpose right now. We have something that we're up against, like an enemy of sorts, and there no story is any good without an obstacle or a bad guy to overcome. And the bigger the obstacle, the bigger the bad guy you overcome, the more exciting the journey. And so if we look at it that way, we're all on this like amazing journey right now in the story, and we're up against this big monster that we thought went away, and then it came back with more tentacles and claws and knives, and so as we survive and as we learn to defeat the monster in different ways, we all get to be the heroes of our own story, but we're held accountable for what we do on the journey and how we approach that monster, and what our integrity looks like when we're faced with fear. What's the way that we respond instinctually, and that's how we will be remembered too. So that's a good thing to focus on.
It's interesting. There were two thoughts kind of came in as you were talking about that. One was the idea of the enemy, right? Like we're fighting, like the personification of this thing, this struggle we're having, and saying that's the enemy. And my first reaction to that was like, well, there's part of the problem right there, right? Mm-hmm. Is that's part of the and I'm not disagreeing with that personification at all, right? Because that's one way for us to frame that we're in a struggle, that we're in a battle. And when we say, I'm battling the enemy, that sets us up for a story, that sets us up for a certain way that we're going to move through how we're fighting that. Cancer is the enemy. Coronavirus is the enemy.
Yeah.
The opposite of my political party is the enemy, right? And so that sets up a fierceness about the way we're going to fight that challenge, right? So my first reaction was like, oh, wait, no, that's wrong. It's not wrong. It's different. It just sets up an energy about it, like, oh, that's the enemy. And I thought, well, what else is there that you can go on that sets up the idea of struggle and such? And it took me to Joseph Campbell, right? And his work with mythologies and archetypes and those kinds of things, of that, the story of the hero's quest, right? The story of going off to conquer the dragon, to conquer the monster, the
Yes.
kraken that's rising up and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And so that is an important way to navigate through this in a sense that is, I'm Robert having a human experience over here with human tools to try to fight this thing. And there's a whole source of power available to us on a different level of consciousness when we sort of say, archetypally, I'm the knight in shining armor trying to fight the dragon, and the dragon's name is whatever you're battling. That can be as big as a global situation, or it can be as big or as small as, I need to get in my car and go to the grocery store, and I'm really struggling with that today.
Yeah.
Struggle is a struggle. How much power you give that struggle is how you choose to frame it as, is it an enemy and it's fierce like that? Or is it just a bump in the road? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I mean, just diving into that sort of frame of thinking, it could be argued that there's a difference between, I'd frame one side as getting in my car, depression, coronavirus, cancer. I'd put those all in one bucket. And the reason is because they're internal. Like, these are things that we can all agree upon. I don't think there's anybody who's going to go, yay, more coronavirus. Like that is, at least I don't think so. It's a rare human being that's going to go, I just want more of that. So that's a little bit different than creating a dragon that is very opinion based. That would be a political party, or could be something that is sort of like man-made and controversial. The other one is going to be like this internal struggle that's you. And for me, I think the dragon gets bigger in an imaginary sense, where it's not like it's more like my own battle. My battle gets harder to fight my mind, and to fight the the thoughts, and how do I stay positive? How do I navigate this thing and learn to lean into it and breathe into it and do positive things with it when it feels like a never ending, pour on me that's not necessarily an outside force, not somebody doing it to me. It's just like this is coming from the inside out. You know what I mean?
So it raises this question, which I love. I've been in different capacities over the years, counseling, for lack of a better word, shamanic teachings, things like that, which looks like mentorship sometimes, or just guidance counselor sometimes. It has a lot of different looks to it. But there's a question sometimes I'll ask people, and in my experience, there's only one answer to this question. It's the one. There's only one answer to it. So I'll ask you this question.
Okay.
What's the one thing you can control? There's only one. In all of the years that I have asked that question and studied and looked for that answer and gone on a quest to find that answer, I've only come up with one. What is the one thing you can control?
I would say your thoughts.
So we could play a game here before I give you the answer and say, is that true? Can you control your thoughts?
Yeah, you can.
So give me an example of how you can control your thoughts.
Well, you can wake up and decide what you're going to think about, what you're going to frame your mind with, how you're going to perceive certain things. So those are choices, and from the thoughts come feelings, and from the feelings come actions. So it all kind of starts from this internal compass, and we so easily can put ourselves down one path or the other based on what we allow our thoughts to do.
Are dreams thoughts?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Is divine guidance a thought? like that idea that just pops into your head, right? Like, oh, I had this thought that just woof comes in. Did you control that?
In some ways, yes, I would say if you allow yourself to be open to the divine interference, you know, because I think the divine comes in and tries to gently give us a hint, tries to gently whisper to us, and then until we're able to receive, you might get knocked all the way over onto the ground.
So I'm not gonna disagree with I mean, you're close. I think you're close in that being there. I would say no. I can't control my thoughts. You know, as a general, you know, a thought is an instantaneous moment, and sometimes thought just comes in. Right, the muse comes in and brings a thought that I wasn't in control of. That the muse just came in and gave me this thought. Mm-hmm. That is creative and intuitive, and I wasn't thinking about that, but all of a sudden I have this thought.
Right.
I wasn't in control of that thought, but I had it.
Sure.
So the next level is, okay, you have this thought. What's the one thing you can control about the thought?
The way you react to it.
So that gets you stop me when you're ready for the answer. Because
here's the deal. I'm enjoying the debate. It's this is always fun for me.
I mean, I kind of have to. I'm so tempted to get him a sound effect and just give him a segment on the show. This is so entertaining.
Can it be a cartoon sound effect that just sounds like?
It'll be
this question is kind of like one of those Zen questions of like, what's the sound of one hand clapping, right? Sure. And you can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and there really is no wrong or right answer. But I do love the way it engages in a certain debate of like, because what we're talking about is control,
right?
There's such a feeling of lack of control that we're out of control. Everything around us feels chaotic, and it's like, and so a lot of the struggle that we're looking for is like, I'm just trying to control something, right? And so we're getting narrower and narrower in that change pulse, right? It's like there's this constriction going down of like people going like, okay, what's the one thing I can control? Well, I can control putting on a mask today. I can control that I'm not going to go outside of the door today. I can control what I'm going to eat. So to your point, what you choose, right? I can choose that. But then there's also, but the no answer to can you control choice is I didn't choose to have this happen in the world.
Right.
I didn't choose these circumstances.
So is it, but you do have a choice with your perspective though.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay. So that's what I was. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yes.
You can choose your perspective.
I don't even need a sound effect. He does his own sound effect.
Yeah, this guy's great.
I'm gonna just sit back and relax.
The segment's gonna be called Deep Thoughts with Robert Farthing.
guys, my choose your perspective speech just got a whole lot deeper.
Yeah. Exactly. I wrote about this in my book. There's so many great stories of when the Jewish people were going through the Nazi camps, and some of them came out of it just so strong mentally, and they survived, and they tell the stories of themselves telling themselves stories of what they could control, which was their perspective on this thing, which was their their ability to still connect in little ways and find, because everything was stripped from them, right? So it's a great example of lack of control, and giving every example of how, okay, well, what about this, all the way to this extreme example, and then you see somebody come out of it who finds a way to write a book from it, and finds a way to take a beating and use that as an experience that they have somehow an interesting, positive, loving perspective on. So yeah, very cool.
So it's kind of like, yeah, all right. If the one thing you can control is your perspective, right? That's a skill set that is learned and practiced, right? It's hard sometimes for people to grasp that idea. Like, wait, what do you mean? That's a horrible thing that happened over there. And my perspective is that's a horrible thing that happened over there. And it's like, yes, but if you choose your perspective on that thing, yeah, I'm not denying that what you bore witness to was a horrible thing, but what do you do with it, right? And how do you react to it? And how do you absorb that information? And what can you personally do to, like you said earlier, transmute and use that, right? And I think that gets to a little bit of, for me personally, the way it works for me is trying to let go of the polarity of a thing of like, that was good or that was bad, right? That's kind of the first easy layer of breaking apart the shell of a situation as seeing it as good or bad or evil or blessed, or, you know, just kind of like knock down the judgment or the perception that it is one thing or the other, open it up to the possibility that it just is, right? And so that's a very Zen concept right there, right? It just is. And so if it's just this thing that happened, you become sort of this conduit, if you will, to move in, command the room with your energy.
The room being your body and your soul, and
the space that you're in, the space that you encompass, the whatever, from the shell inside of your body to the 5-foot diameter invisible bubble of you that's around you at all times, right? Like to be able to go into a situation and recognize it's not good energy or bad energy or good power or bad power. It's just power. And that you go in as the conduit of that, and you just sort of channel that power, if you will, and use it for yourself, use it for the people around you, use it to change and move the things around you in a much healthier, better way, right?
You got me, dude, Robert, you got me, yeah.
Brian's like giddy over here because that's his whole speech.
That's my speech. Choose your perspective, because like the coma for me was exactly that. Like when I woke, because good, bad, or otherwise, like, and when I went to and like go speak on this, one thing I say, and people always go like, huh? I go, they're like, well, I go, if I could get my fingers and toes right back right now, like what, and I can go back and have all that stuff not happen to me, would I do that? No, I would not. Honestly, I would not, because it changed me and it made me who I am. And like through that time, could it go, yeah, all this stuff was really bad, sure, but it also molded me, set me on a path to go out and try certain things for me through ministry and figure out this isn't right. And it brought me back here to Matt, and it brought me back to doing the things I'm doing, which led me on this path to get eventually this spot where I had this new awakening recently with that, like all this stuff sort of lined up. And so, yeah, it came down to in that time, I remember what got me through the coma was, instead of going like, this is a bad thing or a good thing, I literally was like, every day I'm making the choice to just choose a different perspective, that I'm going to be joyful regardless. And like, yeah, so I'm like fanboying out right now.
Yeah. Well, that's just it, right? There's, I used to have a teacher that he was very fond of saying, it's all just water by the river, right? Like I would come back to him with a revelation of some kind. It's all perspective. I learned that it's all perspective, or whatever the teaching was, or whatever the revelation or the cathartic was, or the thing. And, you know, I'd come running up and I'd be like, I had this awakening moment, da 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 da. And he would always go, yeah, it's all just water by the river, right? This information is not, I didn't come up with it. You didn't come up with it. It's just water by the river. The river's right over there. It's free. The water's free. Anybody can drink from it. And so we have these we find that we have these mutual awarenesses. My story is no different story than yours, but we came to the same conclusion, right? It's all perspective. Now you just drank from the same river over there, you know?
Yeah.
So the information is out there for all of us to have access to. Peace, how to navigate through these changing times. All of that is right there. You know, all we can do is what we have with our own toolbox at this point, you know?
Absolutely. I have a a saying I like to say. I tend to go personally into harsh phrases because it jolts people awake, I think, and sometimes it's not always good because you get a reaction, but just to get people to think differently, I like that. So one of the phrases I like to say is it's your fault, everything, and that means me, like everything's my fault. And so you hear that and your initial thing is like, oh, fault, blame, hurt, blah, blah, blah. But when you realize the amount of joy you can have, because as much as my feeling right now is my fault, my feeling based on my perspective, literally 30 seconds from now, gets to be my fault too. So it puts the pen in your hand and you realize that you are the architect of your life. There are certain things that of course are going to be out of your control, which are like, can you jump like LeBron James and no, but also he earned a lot of that also, so you go, okay, but just your perspective on everything, it creates this ownership in who you are in this present moment. And I noticed, Robert, and this is crazy because we're so far into this podcast now that we're gonna wrap soon, and I think you and I are gonna have to start our own. Is what's coming to me from the divine.
I would enjoy that.
Yeah, I thought so. I think we'd really have a good time with it. So I'd like to ask you as a shaman or developing shaman, and where you are in your spiritual journey, what do you focus on? What are some of your daily habits that you've put into place that help you stay at that at that place of Zen as often as possible?
Great question. And, another, a much longer podcast for another time for sure. Right. Yeah. So, because you can go off on a lot of those questions. I mean, you bring up shamanism, right? Shamanism is a deeply layered form of consciousness, right? And so I won't even try to help the people that are watching this define what that is, right? And I always say, I'm not a shaman, I'm a practicing shaman. I practice shamanism, which is really just a form for me of a way to perceive the world around me, right? My perception is colored by ancient wisdoms that are taught from, how did we get out of the ice caves? Well, we got out of the ice caves by men and women that were considered to be shamans in their tribes, right? So and if you'd have told me 20 years ago, oh, by the way, Robert, you're going to go down that rabbit hole, I would have laughed at you. But here we are, right? So 20 years into that practice, and what I have learned over the years and what I continue to practice now is that everything is about intention, right? Somebody asked me once, just recently, they said, what do you have empirical evidence of? Like, that was their question. Do you have anything of empirical evidence?
That's a very Jordan Peterson question to ask. So I think that, have you heard of Jordan Peterson?
Right. Like deep, you want to ask a deep question, but it was so interesting because I'd never been asked that question before. I'd never even contemplated that question before to that level of like empirical evidence. And this like instantly out of my mouth came, everything is vibration. Like I have empirical evidence through the various meditations and practices and just being in life, right? That everything boils down to, it's just vibration. You're just some energetic buzzing thing that happens to be in a thing called flesh and bones and you with a name called Robert, right? But if you wash all of that away, somewhere out there in this mysterious world, it's just a vibration, So it's like, okay, well, that's great. But I am Robert and I am on this planet walking around in a flesh and bone shell. What am I supposed to do with that? That's a little too hippy dippy for my thinking that I'm just walking around like a vibration. But the practices of shamanism also taught me that, well, okay, if that's true, that you are just vibrating, then what do you do with that? You wrap that vibration in an intention, right? Like you need to take and put at your very essence and your very core, what is your intention? What is the one intention of your life? Now, intentions change on a daily basis. Intentions change on a phase of life basis, right? You move from the My intention is to be the best father that I can be. My intention is to love. My intention is that, but I'm 57, 58 years into the path of life here, and I've come to the conclusion that my core intention, the thing that operates best for me, is to hold an intention of peace around this little thing that's vibrating in my heart, that's vibrating in Robert, is to just say, no matter what, that when everything is chaotic and messy around me, I have this inner resource that's vibrating at a core of peace that I can't even really describe.
Sure.
It doesn't have words. It's just a feeling that I have human moments. I have distress. I have sadness. I have all of the things that I feel as a human being. And at the end of the day, when it's like, it's like sometimes that Kraken is in there just ripping crap apart and tearing you down and tearing you down and tearing you down and tearing you down. To do what? To go, hey, you're closer to the source right now, and the source is peace. And all of a sudden there's this like, and things settle down.
Yeah.
90% of my navigating through the world seems to fix itself on some level or regulate itself on some level when I can just sit in the room and vibrate a little peace. That changes everything around me.
Is that something you focus on when you are in crisis? If something
down,
yeah, for the job, or somebody's being out of line, or some big catastrophes come in, or some unexpected whatever, or you woke up late and you're feeling anxious. Do you consciously stop for a second? Or do you try to anyway? Is that something that you would focus on?
Well, it's all different layers and different circumstantial, right? On one layer, there's the practice. On one layer, there is the. You brought this up earlier, and this again, maybe we go off onto this other conversation, but words matter, right? And you use the word fault. That's why I wrote this note down, right? Like there's a conversation to have about how words impact the way we address a circumstance, right? Yeah. And if I said, oh, it's my fault, well, that's going to move you down a path of healing and a path of consciousness and a path of awareness where you're going to break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's the practice of sitting down and actually evoking or invoking peace as a need right now, right? Like if I sit down and I invoke and I say, man, I need some peace right now, or I am calling for peace in the world, that is an invocation of that word to inspire that feeling. That's not always the way it happens. Sometimes, like I say, the inner resources are so embedded now. Like I honestly feel like after so long that there's been a shift. There's been a DNA shift somewhere that just has this innate trust that for me, peace is a piece of me now where I don't have to call it. I don't have to summon it. I just have to be it. I don't have to say it. I can sit in a room that is not peaceful and not say anything and just be this little vibrating peace bubble over in the corner, which sometimes feels like prayer, sometimes feel like conscious thought, sometimes feel like just being in the room and listening. But I'm over here just trying to be a little reflection of peace. And it's fun sometimes. Sometimes you can see an actual like shift, right? Like there's like a boom, things get a little calmer. You go, well, that was cool.
Yeah.
Do I have anything to do with that? Not really. But I'm in a place of being able to observe if there is that shift. Am I the cause of that shift? I don't believe I am, but I believe that I am aware and conscious of being able to see a shift in that.
We have to podcast more because I think you are a part of the shift, and we'll have to debate that. But so as an example for everyone, when they look back on this, and we're gonna wrap here. So, if you watch this interview, if you're paying attention right now, and this ends and you go backwards, you'll notice that there were moments when ideas or thoughts that could potentially be controversial would come up. And I could feel in my self just a sense of, okay, get a hold of your breath, you know, understand, you know, your intention is love and connectedness. But I look up at Robert and you'll see peace. You really will. You were always listening intently and ready to just kind of connect in, and I could feel the peace from you, and it did do something to me. You know, so whether or not you invoked it or not, it definitely made my internal work easier. So we have this vibration that's going back and forth, and I believe we are interconnected, but we can debate that on another day.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
Hey, before you wrap, do you have any challenge you want to throw out there for today? Based on today, I know today was like very deep and we went through a bunch of stuff, but
yeah, this is a good challenge then for everybody. I don't really have one for Robert. I mean, what do you
just
do
for like out there? Yeah,
what do you do for the shaman? You know,
oh, trust me, there's plenty of challenges out there.
No, so I'd say maybe let's go with this. Challenge for today is for you to take 5 minutes, slow down, breathe. And as Robert said, thoughts are going to come and they're going to go. You don't really actually have control over your thoughts. He's right about that. You do have control over the perspective of those thoughts. And then you know, you'll be surprised at how often new thoughts and better thoughts will start to come your way the more you become conscious of this. So take 5 minutes, close your eyes, and just be aware of you and see what rises to the surface. And if you want to take on this challenge, just write in our Instagram feed, right on our messages right there, just one word that sort of rises to the surface. And so if for Robert the word peace comes up, for me it would be the word love comes up. What is it for you? What comes up? And whatever that thing is, you'll be able to lean on that maybe for the next week or a couple weeks when
I would focus,
times seem hard.
Matt, I would focus that challenge just a little bit more and say, you know, for that response that you're asking from your guests or your watchers and stuff, answer the question, what is your intention?
What is your intention?
Do the meditation, do the thoughts, and then take it all the way down into that. What is your intention?
All right, hold on.
Shay does
now
that.
I'm challenging you as an actor. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Now I got a challenge for Robert. Okay. I would like you to give me a 60 seconds or less challenge for our audience that's going to look and feel really good on our Instagram feed.
Boom, I like that a lot.
So present the challenge here. It's going to be unedited. This is you talking to whoever might see this video today on an Instagram feed. Try to reach them and give them a pathway toward something today that would benefit them.
Okay, well, it's not altogether different from what you have already laid out as sort of the template, right?
Hold on, I'm gonna start you over. So this is a 60-second piece. You got to remember, this is like your commercial, right?
So you're going to say like my challenge for you.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
This is the challenge exactly.
Okay, wait. Here. Let's make this, dun, 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 this dramatic. Hold on.
Okay.
Now from our weekly shaman.
So today's challenge is this. Take in the global perspective around you. Sit for as long as you can. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 breaths, 10 breaths. Try to make it as long as you can. And ask yourself the question, what is my intention? And sit with that for as long as you can until you come up with an answer that feels good and resonant in your heart. Because you'll have the answers come and say like, well, is this my intention? Is this my intention? Is this my intention? Is this my intention? Sit with each one of those answers for a little bit. And when it feels right in your heart and it feels good and you feel maybe even tingles or something that feels right and feels like an affirmation and a yes, then hold that intention for as long as you can. And then for the next 24 to 48 hours, be that intention, hold that intention and see what happens in your life around you. Thank you and good night.
And take that intention and write it on your Instagram feed and tag us at Deering Studio on our Instagram. Thank you, Mr. Robert Farthing.
Guys, this has been a great, fun pleasure. What a cool way to wake up and have a cup of coffee and just have cool conversation. Thank you so much. This has been a blast, and I definitely want to do it again.
Awesome. All right, we'll see you soon, Robert. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, be well.
You too. All right, everyone, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share our channel. That means a whole lot to us. Help us put out this light-driven content to the planet, as Robert likes to say. That is our show. Thank you for watching Mornings with Matt. God bless.
Thanks for listening to Mornings with Matt. Please like, subscribe, and follow us at Deering Acting Studio to keep up with the latest content. For more information on classes, private lessons, or professional development coaching, visit www.deeringstudio.com. Have a Deering day, everyone.